coming to you from the celebrity city of board gaming, Omaha, Nebraska. Welcome to the Out of the Dust podcast. I'm your host, Paparazzi Bryce. Tied into the popular recurring Out of the Dust geek list on Board Game Geek, the Out of the Dust podcast is a bi-weekly podcast that is focused on re-exploring games we play that we hadn't previously played in a year or more. Why did the game get dusty? Why did you decide to dust it off? How does the game compare to how you remembered it? Are you likely to play it more often in the future? These are the questions that we're interested in examining on Out of the Dust. This week on the podcast, episode 70 on the Out of the Dust segment, I'll bring Martian Rails Out of the Dust, and a contributor will dust off Gnostica. On the reaction segment, I have an update about a new scam from the creators of the infamous Game of Thrones card game Kickstarter. On the What I've Been Playing segment, I review Solar Storm. On the Obscure Bryce Game segment, I review War of the Worlds, The New Wave. And we wrap up the episode by beginning a review of the BGG and my own top 5 countdown of 2010 with the number 5s on the list. This week on the Out of the Dust segment, I'm going to tell you about Martian Rails, a 2009 entry in the Crayon Rail series from publisher Mayfair Games and designer M. Robert Stribula, who also designed Lunar Rails in the series. I last played it 2 years, 11 months, and 13 days ago. This is actually one of my perfect 10 rated games and ranks along my favorite of the Crayon Rails series. My wife suggested it when we were deciding on a game to play one evening, and I jumped at the chance. I haven't been playing Crayon Rail games as often as I used to, and I've been feeling that burning desire for one. Martian Rails was the perfect choice to quench that thirst for now. It brings to the table an excellent mix of terrain types, offers up interesting events, and includes the most delightful mix of resources, including the all-time greatest resource of any board game ever, the Rotten Berries. My wife wound up winning the game pretty handily as I got into too much debt trouble early. I was starting to recover and make a comeback towards the end, but I would have needed several more turns to reach the 250 million plateau. I'm definitely hoping this starts a trend of getting the rest of the series out of the dust soon. They would be perfect games to use the big set of Iron Clay's poker chips I just got in the mail with. Let's see what a contributor brought out of the dust. Carthoris Pyramidus, username Carthoris, brought Gnostica out of the dust. Gnostica is a 2001 tarot card game-based area control game from publisher Looney Labs and designers John Cooper, Jacob Davenport, Corey Heath, and Kristen Matherly. An obscure group of designers, the most well-known of which is Corey, who designed Zendo. Carthoris last played Gnostica 1 year, 10 months, and 26 days ago. He writes, "One of my favorite games ever, and the one that originally got me into Looney Pyramids games. There were only the two of us, and I really prefer 4 or 5 for this game. The other player needed a lot of rules refreshing, and I don't think she had a great time losing to me. We used the Barbary Tarot, a very pretty deck that I like to use for Dungeon Solitaire Labyrinth of Souls, but alas, it doesn't read easily for Gnostica. In the future, I'll return to the Fergus Hall Tarot of the Witches, or the Anthony Clark Magic Tarot. Thanks for the contribution, Carthoris. This is not a game I've ever heard of, but I've got to say, the concept sounds absolutely fascinating and unique. Definitely one I wouldn't mind playing if the opportunity ever arose." Reaction segment time. Guess what? I have an update for you about a new exciting opportunity for you from the creators of the infamous Game of Thrones card game. Yay! As you will recall, I've done several segments on these guys, the masterminds behind one of the most inept and insane Kickstarter projects in history, in previous episodes because they keep turning up in surprising new ways. Their new project doesn't actually have anything to do with board games, but it's too amazing not to share. And I'm going to connect it with board games in a very tenuous and loose way by the end of the segment. Anyway, prepare yourselves for Deliverable! It's an app that people will use to have local purchases delivered to their home on the same day it's purchased. Alessandro and Daniel describe it as Uber for products. You say that sounds kind of like various services already in existence. Well, yeah, that's what these guys do, invent things that already exist. In any event, they had a short-lived Kickstarter for this that was quickly shut down, but there's a web page that is still being updated periodically as they try to make this a real thing. The latest update claims to have hired several hundred drivers in New York and a July launch date. But the best part was the Our Story section of the website that relates the incredible tale of the inspiration for Deliverable. Sadly, that page is no longer part of the site, having been deleted. But fear not! I copied and saved it for posterity. Here's how it reads. I was sleeping when my wife wakened me. I was discovered that she had been sleeping the entire time. I realized that I was in a dreamlike stupor. Stupor misspelled here. Nothing made sense. My skin tingles all over my body. I gaze over to my wife. I realize that I have just invented something that can help us. I had been on watching and thinking about Black Lives Matter. I decided to look at my iPad. I remember the greens. I could never forget the green tint behind the image. I thought app development is what I am good at. I expired that evening with a warm milk. I became an inventor, like Newton! Wow, bold claim! But now I want to play the Newton board game at least. Alright, and here's the further board game connection. There was another suspicious Kickstarter that launched last week for 2 sets of eco-friendly dice sets. Meteorite dice, dice with meteorite fragments, and ocean dice made with real seashells. The suspicious part being that these dice sets appear to be readily available mass market at other online retailers, and these guys may be trying to resell an existing product. Though the creators claim being eco-friendly is what sets these dice apart and warrants the high price tag. The creator names are different, and the Kickstarter campaign is a little higher quality than what we've come to expect from Daniel and Alessandro, so it doesn't appear to be them hatching another scam, but the location of the campaign is Connecticut, which caused several followers of Daniel and Alessandro to investigate the campaign and these creators thoroughly. So there we go. It just amuses me that apparently Daniel and Alessandro have caused any campaign coming out of Connecticut to be treated with suspicion and leeriness. But if there is something shady going on with this unrelated campaign, maybe Connecticut deserves this extra scrutiny. This week on the What I've Been Playing segment, I'm going to tell you about Solar Storm, a cooperative card game from publisher Duranda Games and designer Aidan Lowther. This was funded in October of last year, so with a 9-month turnaround time for funding to receiving during pandemic time, I consider this a very impressive turnaround time and will make me take notice of the publisher's future projects. The project originally caught my eye because of its attractive theme, attractive-looking art, a nice combination of mechanics, and its solo ability. Players are crew members on a spaceship damaged by solar flares and are in danger of falling into the sun if the players can't repair it fast enough. Here's how it works. The board is composed of 9 randomly arranged room cards, though the energy core is always at the center of the 3x3 configuration. Players will use an action menu selection system to spend 3 actions on their turn, moving from room to room, using resource cards to repair the various rooms, a combination of resource cards to power up the rooms, activating the room's special effects, gathering additional resource cards, and sharing resource cards with other players in the same room. Each room card pictures 3 resource icons that can be damaged, kept track of by the removal of damaged cubes, and a different combination of 3 resource icons required to power up the room after it's been repaired. There are 4 different resources in the game, and players will have to use a tight hand management system with a 6-card hand limit to try to get just the right configuration of cards to both repair and power up a room. If players repair and power up all 8 rooms and then activate the energy core room, the ship's power is restored, and the players escape the sun's gravitational pull and win the game. At the end of each player's turn, a damage card is drawn, and between 1 and 3 rooms are damaged, depending on which phase the game is in, with more rooms becoming damaged later in the game at the same time. If a room ever needs to be damaged that no longer can, because all 3 of its damage cubes have already been removed, then the ship suffers a critical power failure, falls into the sun, and the players die and incidentally lose the game. In addition, eventually the damage deck will deplete, and further damage is inflicted on the player resource deck instead. If the resource deck ever runs out of cards, then the ship suffers a critical power failure at that point in time, falls into the sun, and the players die that horribly way as well. With a few plays under my belt now, this appears to be a legitimately challenging co-op. I just barely won my first game on easy mode, as there were several opportunities that came up in the game where I could have lost with the wrong damage card draw. I have not won any normal difficulty games yet, so the game has that nice addictive pull to keep me coming back to the table for more. There are several progressively more difficult levels after normal as well. I have a lot of admiration for how finely tuned this game appears to be. There's a nice mix to the room's activation abilities, nothing appears to be overpowered, and there doesn't appear to be a surefire strategy for guaranteed success. There's a wonderful amount of tension present as the player meeples rush around the ship trying to keep rooms repaired enough to avoid sudden losses while making progress on powering them up and advancing the win condition. There are many delightful moments of excitement in the game as the damage cards are drawn and players hope that the one room that will spell doom for them doesn't come up. The efficiency puzzle to get things done while keeping disaster at bay is engaging and keeps everyone interested and working together. The solo mode is going to go down as one of the best I've encountered this year, as well as the solo player must manage 3 player meeples in the ship with a single hand of cards, which is a brilliant solution to the frustrating playing multi-handed requirement of many solo experiences. I'm really happy I backed this and foresee this getting a lot of regular play throughout the year. I think there's even a chance it makes my top 10 of the year list. Obscure Bryce Game segment time. This week on the segment I'm going to tell you about War of the Worlds, The New Wave, a 2019 deck-building war game from publisher Grey Fox Games and designer Dennis Plastinen. This game just came out last year and has really flown under the radar, racking up only a handful of log plays a month since its release. I was completely unaware of it myself until I happened to see a sale notification for it on the Hot Deals forum of BGG. I like deck builders and I like Grey Fox Games, so for $16 on Amazon I figured, hey, what the heck? I'll give it a spin and see if it's a hidden gem or not. So, what did I find out? Well, here's how it works. The theme of the game takes place a few years after the initial War of the Worlds novel and sees the aliens attempting a new invasion. The game is exclusively a 2-player game, and one player takes the role of the invading aliens, while the other player takes the role of defending Britain. Each player has an asymmetric starting deck, a personal supply of asymmetric cards to supplement the deck with, and an asymmetric objective for the game. The board for the game consists of a map of Great Britain divided into regions, most of which are populated by 3 population cubes at the beginning of the game. The alien player's objective is to eliminate all of these cubes. They will do this by building their deck with flying saucers, tripods, and cards to move those pieces around on the map, eliminating population. Meanwhile, the human player is building their deck to mount a resistance against the aliens and deal enough damage to them to demoralize them and drive them off Earth. If the humans use their cards to deal a total of 30 damage to the aliens, kept track of on a damage track, then the humans win! The game plays surprisingly briskly, especially for a war game. It's an intense and tight game and has come down to the wire each time I've played. While deck builders that use a board are unusual, there have been area control ones before and even wargame ones before. But the thing that really makes War of the Worlds stand out from the crowd is the small deck that players work with throughout the game. If you like trashing cards in Dominion or using similar mechanics in other deck builders to keep a deck slim along the way, you're going to love War of the Worlds. This is not a deck builder where bloat is a problem. Most of the starter cards have ways of trashing themselves, and there are a generous portion of cards that trash themselves for more powerful effects at key moments in the game and each player's personal stock of supply cards to expand their deck with. Though expand isn't really the right word, it's more of a modification and replacement since the deck never gets very large. And at the end of the game, the deck might very well be even smaller than the size it started with. For myself, I love having exquisite control over the crafting of a deck, so that element really appeals to me in War of the Worlds. All things considered, the game really impressed me. Besides the finely tuned deck building, I love the tactics of the game. The hit-and-run tactics of the humans and the overwhelming force of the aliens are impressively balanced because of their different endgame objectives. I consider it $16 very well spent. I had lots of fun reviewing the BGG Top 5 of 2015 and comparing it to my own Top 5 from that year, so I'm going to go back another 5 years and do a 2010 comparison. I'll kick things off this episode by taking a look at the number 5 ranked game from 2010 on BGG and comparing it to my own number 5 from that year. To avoid crossover with my own list, I'll actually mention the 7th highest ranked game on BGG from 2010 first. Merchants and Marauders, the epic pirate-themed sandbox game from publisher Z-Band and designers Kasper Eiergaard and Christian Bakushin. For a long time, one could make the compelling argument that Merchants and Marauders was one of the few pirate-themed games that was actually fun, as it's a theme that board games have, oddly, historically struggled with. 10 years later, this is still a deservedly high-ranked game in my opinion. Sandbox games are pretty few and far between, and Merchants and Marauders enjoys the benefit of existing in that space both in the realm of mechanics and quality. I own the game, but it's not often played. It does take some dedicated time to get to the table, and, as is the nature of a sandbox game, it does take some effort to refamiliarize myself with the rules before getting it back to the table. But I'm happy to have it in the collection because, on the rare occasions it does make it to the table, it is a positively memorable experience. Despite it enjoying its 10th anniversary this year, there don't appear to be any current plans for a reprint, but in a surprising move counter to most of their other games, Z-Man seems to have kept this one in print for some reason, and it's readily available in retail at the moment. My number 5 game of 2010 is Trois, the classic dice placement game also from Z-Man, and from designers Sébastien Dujardin, Xavier Georges, and Elaine Orban. This selection crosses over with the BGG Top 5 list because Trois actually appears at position number 3 on that list. This particular design team has delivered a consistent stream of successes over the years, but Trois remains their highest ranked and highest regarded effort. I really enjoy the tight experience of the game, which is precisely why I don't recommend the Ladies of Trois expansion, which completely wrecks the delicate balance of the base game with overpowered ladies, dice placement cards, and tiles. I don't even like the purple dye from the expansion, which adds an unneeded length to the game. I don't recommend the Trois-inspired Black Angel either, which seems to have substituted all the best parts of Trois with ill-thought-out and less enjoyable replacements. Trois is perfect just the way it is. The point-salad options of the Lords, the event cards, and the dice placement cards are all exceptionally balanced in their offering of thought-provoking opportunities. My wife is not as enamored with this one as I am, so my physical copy, which was one of my more memorable Grail game scores when it was out of print, is not often played, but I do enjoy the game frequently online at Board Game Arena. Well, that will do it for episode 70. Thanks for listening. Feel free to join the Out of the Dust Podcast Guild at BoardGameGeek.com. Follow the podcast on Twitter at OutOfTheDustBGG. Leave a comment at the Guild. PM me on BGG under user handle Radagast14, or email me at radagast14@CenturyLink.net. And join the Out of the Dust conversation yourself at our monthly geek list at BGG. Alright, play me out, Tananda!